Hoops through life. Hoops through life. Through life.
Welcome to another episode of Hoops Through Life, a podcast where we discuss the women's basketball collegiate recruiting process and transition from high school to college. I'm your host, Elsbeth Bierman. I am very excited for our guest today. She was my previous boss and mentor, Coach Melissa Smeltzer-Kraft. Before getting into coaching, Melissa was a standout basketball and softball player at Drew University. Inducted into the 2017 Basketball Hall of Fame class, Melissa holds records in too many statistical categories to count, so I'll just give the highlights. She is currently second in career points. She holds the record for three-pointers made in a game at 9. She holds first and second place for three-pointers made in a season, 66 and 72, and holds first for career three-pointers made at 234. Melissa is entering her 15th year of coaching. She started her coaching career in 2008 as an assistant at Drew University, quickly moving on as an assistant at Vassar College and then an assistant at the University of Rochester until landing at Shenandoah University in 2013, where she was an assistant for 1 year and then promoted to head coach in 2014. She has spent the last 10 years flipping the SU program, and since 2019, the Hornets have won 2 conference championships, and I know firsthand from working with her, Melissa attributes a lot of her success to the recruiting process and the players that she's been able to get into the program. Melissa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Elle, for that amazing introduction. What you failed to mention is all the missed shots and turnovers that I had. You're far too complimentary, so thank you.
I did notice that you were up there in attempts, but I decided not to include those.
No, shooting percentage was not one of the categories that I thrived in. But I wasn't afraid to shoot, that's for sure. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's just jump on right in. So let's start from the beginning of the process. So from your perspective, where does your evaluation of a potential student athlete begin? Can you just walk us through a little bit of your process?
Yeah. I think the beginning of an evaluation can happen at any point in terms of interactions, whether it's noted and intentional or not. And for what it's worth, I really do believe this, is that every single student athlete's experience is so unique. And yes, you can lump them in similarities and tendencies and so on and so forth. But, you know, everybody's story is very different, whether you connect with a kid as a young camper at your girls camp, a local kid, or, Twitter, or shall I say X, is, a very, in all forms of social media or other ways that, again, maybe you don't realize it's connecting as like, this is moment A on this whole train. But, every single person is so unique and so different. And for me, it's that balance of giving kids a clean slate and a fresh start, and not using things from the past or other coaches and their interactions against them, and making that experience unique to my interactions with them and arguably firsthand encounters. But then also maybe not peaking too soon. Sometimes people will send me, this kid is a 2020 and insert year. And it's like, oh my gosh, they're too young. This is too soon. This is too early. And for what it's worth, our recruiting process at Shenandoah has gotten earlier and earlier. And I think that's because of the stabilization of our own program. But there is too early for me. Like, if I like you and you're that young, I'm going to see you on ESPN one day. Like, you're too good. You're too good. So all of that is just this perfect storm. And, obviously there's 100 ways to lump these journeys, but hopefully they all are pretty unique and independent.
So you mentioned Twitter a little bit. How do you use social media in your recruiting process?
Stalking. I love this app. Kids are and parents, if they have social media, they are doing it with intentionality, and they're branding, and they're very aware of what they're doing. So am I. And I love going on there and seeing what they're doing, and seeing what they're liking, and seeing what they're understanding, and seeing what they have access to. And a big thing for me that I've encountered in my entire D3 life, all of those schools that you mentioned in my bio are all Division III institutions. So I'm a D3 lifer. this is for me. I love Division III. I see myself as a living, walking, breathing billboard for this level. And if I have to explain Division III and you are not welcoming to that explanation, that's an immediate turnoff for me because as much as I feel like it's my job, I think it's great if I have to convince you and you're not buying it. Like you're not going to come play for me. You're not going to be interested in my school or me at this level. Um, so it's a way to get indicators to the green light of Division III and their awareness
Hmm.
of it. Um, Also just like some people tweet dumb stuff, and I don't mean politically, but just even like against coaches or whatever, and likes matter as well. So
I thought you were gonna say dumb stuff like what they had for breakfast or something.
oh no, like things that are so frivolous in the moment and they maybe feel good when they hit send. But I would like to hear what you eat for breakfast. It's not gonna bother me. But yeah, no, I think social media is a tool that I use to investigate. I jokingly said stalk. Yeah, and if kids don't have t Twitter or anything, that's okay too. I'm not relying on that solely, of course.
Hmm. And so you kind of mentioned something about gauging even not only interest but recognition of a Division III as you're doing that stalking. What types of things do you see? Are you looking for that recognition?
Well, listen, if kids are on the hunt for a scholarship, I don't have one, right? It's just
Hmm.
simply something I don't have. I don't have that to offer. My institution and every institution that I've worked at, gives aid. So again, I can explain that to you through the process, but if you're set on that idea of Division II or Division I, that's okay, but we're not going to get along. We're not going to connect, and we're not going to go down this road very far because
Hmm.
the speed bumps are so big in terms of what you're seeking. Um, so yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
would say in terms of that. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Listen, I get it. I get it. So for me, I have to find the kids that are going to fit with me. And if you're not one of them, that's okay.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I hear from parents and students is I don't know if they truly understand it's about fit. Like you have to like them and they have to like you. And another thing that I hear a lot from parents and students is how intimidating social media is, especially with parents. They don't know how to guide their student athlete in even using social media. What should they post? Do they need to follow every school that's recruiting them? Things like that. Do you have any like just very quick social media tips from your perspective for an
I mean,
overwhelmed
this is
parent?
so hard because your best bet is to probably not even have it, right? Because it just becomes this thing that's distracting. And, I hate to compare it to dating because that's weird. So I won't. But in the same way, if you really are interested, even as friends or people, you're trying to meet new people, right? Your daughters are going to go away to college and they're going to have to stick out their right hand, look someone in the eye and say, "Hi, my name is," and you're going to get to know people, and you've got to rely on that more than the social media stuff. But it's a sign of the times. It's really scary. So, I don't know that I would say advice because it's hard. It's hard. It's branding though. So
Yeah.
make sure it's on brand, as they say, as you say, Coach L, I say that to you. I say that all the time still and quote you. If it's part of what you want to be known for and remembered for, then do it. If you don't, if it's too overwhelming, then don't. You can abstain.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I can just see how so many student athletes get paralyzed by that. And I heard not for basketball, but I've heard for other sports, student athletes are getting advised like film during your club practice, and that's what you want to send. And to me, that just seems so overwhelming to think about. Not only do I need to work on my skills and go to these tournaments, now I have to worry about filming at
Branding.
all times and branding. So I think that's just another layer added stress for a lot of student athletes.
And to go off of what you just said, the reality is that there is a school for everyone out there. I really do believe that because
Hmm.
there are D3 programs right now that are hurting for numbers and bodies. There
Hmm.
really are. So maybe you don't want to go there. So that's a different story, right?
Yeah.
But if you need to film things that are so not like a game or you're not able to show it in those moments, you maybe need to scale down your schools and what you're looking at. And again, it goes back to fit. I mean, we can't hammer fit enough.
Mm-hmm.
Your dream school is in fact that it's a dream, right? Let's live in reality and let's go out here and let's be aggressive to find what is the best holistic experience for you for the next 4 years.
Yeah,
And if that's not your end goal, then what are you doing? I don't
yeah,
I don't get it,
yeah.
So
And I totally agree that there's a place for everybody, really. So
yeah.
so I know that you mentioned previously about how the recruiting landscape for Shenandoah has changed a lot. Where, not where are you finding kids, that's a silly way to put it, but like what has that change looked like in the past couple of years?
Yeah, I think the evolution of our program has been very unique, and yes, I'm sitting here on the cusp of season 10 as the head coach, and it's humbling to think about where we've come from, where we've been, and where we hope to go and head in the future. And I did this evaluation and self-reflection after, so our first years are now here, right? We have 5 first years, and we observed that we did not see any of them at the July open viewing periods last year. And it's
Wow.
like, wow, yeah, whoa, yeah, what are you doing, coach? Well, obviously overwhelmed in July to the point of shutting down. No. It's just about fit. And yes, that period is so vital. It really is. It really is. And I'm going to keep showing up every July with a big old Shenandoah hoodie on or whatever I'm wearing in an ice cold gym.
Yeah.
Um, but we made that reflection. Oh my goodness. We did not see a single one of our first years at those tournaments that we went to, which we believed and spent a lot of money that were the best for us. But you know what we did? We ruled a lot of kids out, which is equal to fit and finding fit and figuring it out. But I think a lot more kids are interested in us. The kids that I'm saying no to, I would have killed for in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our roster stabilized. I think I said that already. And we've got 19 on our roster right now. We're gonna graduate 4 to 5-ish to be determined. Not because they're not graduating, but because of that COVID year, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be more particular and more intentional and not just throw bodies at a wall, but we need to know exactly what they're going to give and what we hope for them. And a big, big, big part, a secondary piece to recruitment is player development, which I think is totally undervalued at our level.
Mm-hmm.
And, seeing kids and believing in them and then investing in them and helping them are two different things. Like everybody, my mom could walk in a gym and tell me who the best player is. That's not hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you willing to pour into the kids to develop them mentally, physically, emotionally in the next 4 years to make them the best player they can be or help them on that journey because it's their journey, right? We're just guiding them. But we're there's so many different ways we're finding kids.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, I think kids are reaching out to us a lot more, and we have to be more picky than we've ever been. And that's really hard. And I literally had a conversation with our assistant coach this morning. And I said this to you on the preamble, Elle. We lost 2 really good recruits this weekend to other institutions. And one is a comparable one. At least I think it's comparable. They might not think it's comparable. I'm trying to make it comparable. And the other is a scholarship level. And it's like, okay, we're on the right kids, right? So that's the reassurance to us. We were in their final 2 or 3. Great. Feather in the cap. Amazing. But we lost them. So it still hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So we go back to the drawing board a little bit. And it's like you sit here and you still have to be picky. You still have to be picky. And you're going to lose kids and it's going to be okay. The other thing that I think has influenced our recruitment so, so much is our assistant coaches. And I've had this reflection with our current assistant, Tessa Johnston, who is a rock star. She's amazing. And just like her predecessor, which was you, amazing. You were here with us for 6 years, Elle. And the evolution of our program within your tenure was unbelievable. I mean, I literally remember crying in a Wendy's parking lot with you after we didn't score in the fourth quarter and
Yeah.
lost a game on the road. You laugh. I still cry. It's fine. Um, but Tessa doesn't know that life, right? So she's like, we got to get her, we got to get her, we got to get her. And I'm sitting here telling these sob stories from the past, and she's like, I don't care. I think back to the assistant before you, which was Abby Diop, and the assistant before her, who I'm still very good friends with, Megan Sullivan, now Sutton. And I'm still very close with Megan. She lives here in Winchester. And she's like, Melissa, this is like a different planet that you live on than what we lived on together. Right. So I think my assistant coaches, our program's assistant coaches, these women have been so influential in the way we recruit because their dreams are very big and very lofty and often on the trajectory to be a head coach. And luckily for them, the assistant before them made the job better and better and easier and easier. And so we can go to new levels because of them.
Yeah. When you say, oh, I just lost my whole train of thought. Oh, more kids are reaching out to you these days. Do you know, and it's okay if you don't, do you
Mm-hmm.
know the percentage of kids, you just rolled your eyes, the percentage of kids on your roster
Mm-hmm.
that reached out to you versus you reached out to them
Well,
for
that's a good
initial
question. That's not what I
contact?
thought you were going to ask. When you asked me percentage, I thought you were going to ask me like, what percentage of emails? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I get 50 million emails a day that are just absolute garbage. That's a really good question. I'm looking at it really briefly here. I would say, maybe there's 19 kids on the roster. I would say I would split it into thirds. And I would say a third of them, we saw them with context clues, loving them.
hmm
A third of them, they saw us with context clues, thinking this was a good institution for them. And then what would the other third be? What did I leave out?
Um,
Maybe, maybe coming to camp or them just putting themselves out there.
okay.
Context clues of like commonalities or themes of schools that were reaching out to them, or even I'm seeing that other schools are contacting them and a mishmash of that in the other third. But I
hmm
do think our academic profile has led a lot of these women towards us. Um, with our very strong health professions, we are able to draw PT, PA, nursing, etc., at a really high level, and a third of our roster will go on to
Yeah.
grad schools at Shenandoah University. So
So it sounds like it's a pretty even split. So
I'm
with,
making it nice and even for
yeah.
you right now, but yes,
Well, I mean, it's not like 5% and 95%, right? So
correct.
there is some, not, I don't want to say hope, but if people are seeking out Shenandoah, there is a chance for them to get on your radar. And with more people reaching out to you all, like, how are you deciphering that communication? What are you looking for when somebody's
Yep.
reaching out?
That's such a great question. And I say this all the time. What are things that draw me to kids and vice versa? And honestly, it's mutual interest. So I can go into a gym and I can see a kid text, call, da, 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 and they don't answer me. That's not mutual interest, right? So same thing for you to me. But the fastest thing I want to get to is realizing if you're a real person because I get 10 million junk emails and the first sentence is my name is Elle and I love basketball and I've been playing since I was 6. It's like that's a really great story, Elle. I've gotten 4 of those today. Or, for me, it's the reality is we recruit from a 3 to 5 state region. And I am aware of that due to previous experiences. If you have to drive past every other ODEC school on the way to visit me, you might find something that you like better than me. We are the northernmost school in our conference, so I tend to go north and try to bring kids south because it feels different as opposed to the other way around. But the ability to realize that that's a real person and they'll answer my text and they're interested in us is the biggest and fastest battle to win. And then once you get over that hump, all the other stuff you have to decipher. Then you work through talent, then you work through all these other things.
And I know those like basketball stories from when you were born and a basketball was put in
Yeah.
your hand and it's sweet. But what are your thoughts on like a basketball resume? So somebody sending a little email, they're interested, clearly interested for maybe they did a little bit of research and they like the health professions at Shenandoah and they attach a
Yeah.
basketball resume. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's all needs context, right? Because if you're averaging 28 points a game and you're playing against nobody, Good for you. That's amazing, right?
Right,
Do
right.
I believe that you could put the ball in the hoop in the ODAC and in our conference and help us? So it's all about context. Same thing with kids that maybe don't have stats that are unbelievable. I mean, one of the greatest players that's ever played at Shenandoah sat the bench at McNamara and had no stats or photos from her high school experience and was the first ever defensive player of the year for Shenandoah women's basketball. So it's all about that context piece, and that's a big component to my job is can I put this person into the picture and the puzzle, and does it still look beautiful,
Hmm.
and does it fit? The other thing is, a big piece for us is the visit. And I've heard a lot about other people's visits at other schools and so on and so forth. But for our visits, I take great pride in giving you my undivided attention for a chunk of hours. We've kind of shaved the meal off because of COVID a few years ago, and we haven't really gone back to it yet. Um, but I need to get to know you, and you need to get to know me. And again, just like meeting new people, making new friends, creating relationships in any paradigm, it's you have to vibe, you have to click, and that's just such an important component for me. And it because I want to be in your life the rest of your life, and I want to work closely with you for the next 4 years. And if we don't get along, it's not gonna be fun.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, it sounds like the relationship aspect is something that's very important to you in the recruiting process. And I know that sometimes visits can be very intimidating, especially if it's maybe their first ever visit, meeting
mhm,
coaches and
yeah,
all of that. What are you looking for in addition to like vibing with the person on that
yeah.
visit when they come, official or unofficial?
I mean, I think for us, it's just I'm very aware that this is very nerve-wracking. So I always try to be kind and warm them up and, not too overwhelming. But, I like to laugh and play. I like to be silly and I like to be serious when it matters. And I think we'll get through all of those within a 2 to 3 hour period. And I want to get to know you. I want to understand you a little bit better and what makes you tick. Huge turnoffs are your parents speaking for you. You're an independent person. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I try to make them speak for themselves. They are 6 and 4. If you're 16 and on a college visit, speak for yourself.
Hmm.
Please, please do it. That doesn't mean the parents shouldn't speak because I have really good relationships with our parents of our players because we also got along. And I'm getting closer in age to them than I am to the players as I
Yeah.
keep getting older. Unfortunately, I just keep aging. But no, just speak for yourself and your ability to express yourself, your ability to self-reflect are all really important. And in some ways, yes, it is an interview. So if you come and you're underprepared to speak for yourself or communicate how your season went or what your vision is for yourself in college, you really should do those thoughts at home and organize them and be prepared to speak. And it's very clear when kids are being asked something for the first time and they have no idea how to answer. I've had kids circle back to me and say, I would actually like to answer that differently after I thought about it in the car. And that's great. I'll supersede that answer. And then there are kids that, think that putting other people down to raise themselves up is also the right answer. And, that's any indicator to you not being a good teammate is going to be a turn off because the reality is we have more role players that are great teammates than we have all conference players. And we had 3 all conference players last year. So, the awareness to say like and understand that you're not going to come in and be the stud right away and that you give indicators that you're going to be a great teammate and a great person to be around off the court and in the locker room.
Hmm.
And that's the stuff that I definitely find attractive in prospective students.
Yeah, and you also mentioned player development. So I think for high school athletes to understand, excuse me, that they don't need to come in right away and be the star player and that they just need to have the attitude of, okay, I can get better and I want to work hard to get better. And I think that's something that they should ask coaches, like, how much do you invest in player development? because that'll give an indication of maybe what the coach is looking for, if they're just looking to potentially out recruit them, or if they're
Right.
really looking to invest in who they have and take them all 4 years.
Yes.
Are there any questions that you ask most, if not all, of the recruits you get on campus? And what are those answers that you're looking for?
Yeah, I actually feel like I stole these questions from UL, so I'll repeat questions that you already know. Certain things we ask are, I'm imagining that we're sitting and speaking with a either rising senior or current senior, probably before their senior basketball season, okay? Or a
Mm-hmm.
junior that's just finished their junior. That's probably that 6 month window where we do a first visit and have an intense conversation face to face. Is, what's something that you think you bring to a college basketball team at this exact moment? And sometimes they answer with tangible basketball skills and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. So if there's a way to answer both of those sides of it, it's really great. Speaking to their leadership or their ability to be a good teammate, but then giving me a tangible basketball thing, that's awesome. And then what's something what did I just say? What you bring to the table right now? Is that what I just
Yeah,
said?
yeah.
And then what's something you want to get better at in the next year before you begin playing college basketball? So a lot of times the way I ask that to a student, they haven't thought about it in the sense of they're so focused on what's coming for their senior year, as they should. And then I say college basketball, and then you can see the little, like, their belly gets a little nervous and their belly flips. They're like, "Oh God, you're holding me accountable already." And something tangible to work on, and thinking about the next 5 years of their basketball lives, because in theory they have their senior year and then 4 years in college. And so many students think about the moment they commit, and then they don't think a second past that photograph. And we want kids to have lofty goals, and we want them to dream, and we want to help them. And we also don't want to put the absolute burden of them saving us on that plate. That's not
Mm-hmm.
their job. If that is their job, then I have failed them to bring in great teammates,
Mm-hmm.
especially with where our program is right now. So, we've tried to create almost like an apprenticeship and a tutelage component to what we're doing here at Shenandoah, where we want freshmen to compete for time. We're only trying to bring in kids that want to compete for time. We don't want kids to come in and think, I'm going to sit the bench and I'm okay with that. We don't want that. And then, if they earn time and they get better and they can work through some adversity without the pressure of the world on their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Not from me anyway. I can't control where other pressure points come from, but
Right.
not from me anyway.
And those two questions that you
Those
asked
were your
them,
questions, right? Those I stole those from you.
I don't remember. Maybe we
You
were talking
definitely
one day.
drafted. Yeah, no.
So what are some red flags when you ask those questions and you hear an answer? What's something that would really turn you off to that student athlete?
I don't know if there's an absolute red flag that I've heard. Maybe the lack of self-awareness to have thought about that or think that way. But again, maybe I'm just bursting the dam and they'll start to think about it. So it's not it's just a temporary piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you want kids to be able to think about themselves where it's applicable, and then about the team where it's applicable. So I try to ask a mix of those questions so they can put themselves in. Because listen, the summertime, you're supposed to be really selfish, and you're supposed to grind, and you're supposed to pour into your own cup. And
Mm-hmm.
then when we come in and we walk in the gym as coaches, like, we expect everyone to be selfless. I don't know that there's a single red flag.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, you did say you try to give those like a clean slate. So I think
Yeah.
within that comment, there's always room for growth in your eyes of like
Yeah.
understanding where they are, maybe where they're going. And I think that's something that's really positive because I know sometimes kids don't have good relationships with their high school coach or their AAU
Right.
coach, and that can really affect them in certain ways, especially in the recruiting process, if they
Yeah.
just don't get along for whatever reason. I mean, what role do high school coaches and AAU coaches play for you in the recruiting process?
Um, I think the primary piece to my recruitment of a student athlete. The primary player is the student athlete. Their family is integral, and then everybody else flows off of there. I find it to be a huge turnoff if you feel like you have a handler, and that's just because I don't think that's how Division III works.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I just want to get to know the student and their family and those people that influence them. And, it depends on the high school coach. It depends on my experiences with them. It depends on the AAU coach. Again, if it goes back to something I said earlier, where oftentimes I've dealt with AAU coaches who don't believe in the Division III model.
Hmm.
They don't. You can verify that by looking at what their branding is. So I'm not going to fight an uphill battle, especially if that kid is seeking us out or knows that this is the right fit for them, including me, but the institution that I work at. And they might be going against the grain and annoying that head coach because that head coach wants to say they have scholarship kids and they're the one outlier.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It depends on the situation with how much I interact with coaches and whatnot. And, I don't know if I'm doing the best I can do with the relationship with the coaches. I probably can be better, but I'm a coach married to a coach with two kids with 19 players and a full-time assistant.
Hmm.
So sometimes the things that have to give might be those relationships with people that are perceived to be handlers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, do you have any advice for kids? Because they may just have grown up maybe in that AU program and they just don't know anything else. Or
Yeah.
maybe they moved to an area and this is like the closest AU program to them. And maybe
Yeah.
they're skilled enough, but they just either don't know other options or they are open. How can
You,
you vet an AU program? How can
Yeah,
you
I mean,
do
you
those
can play
things?
AAU. The other thing I'd like to say is, um, I want to say one of our incoming first years didn't play AAU,
And you
and
even
that's
mentioned
so
you didn't see any of them in last
yeah,
July.
she
Yeah.
didn't play AAU, and let me tell you, she's good enough to be here. That's for sure.
Hmm.
So, they come in many different shapes and sizes and varieties in terms of what they're experiencing. Um, but I think the student athlete must remember that they are in charge of themselves. Your parents are going to send you to college, I would imagine with a car, I would imagine with a credit card and a bank account and a lot of power.
Hmm.
So why aren't you in charge of the decision to pick the place that you are spending all that money and spending all that time? So, and the reality is when you get here, you're speaking for yourself to all the adults around you and your peers, of course. So remember, no one's in charge of this experience except for you. And I absolutely commend the parents that allow that to happen and foster that environment for the student. But that's the reality. You all are doing these visits. You all are excited for this to happen. You're sponsoring that. There's one person that should be in control of that. And I understand that families, it's a financial decision, it's a family decision. I am not denouncing that at all. I want to say that clearly. I know it's a family decision, but the student should be in charge. So in some ways, the AAU experience, temporary, permanent, all they know is just one component of it. It's just one piece of it. So they should remember to, grab the bull by the horns.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming, so please correct me if I'm wrong, the student athlete that didn't play AAU, I don't know if they didn't play their whole life or maybe just this past season, but would you say if that seems to me maybe extreme or the outlier, right? Like a lot of people play
Yes.
AAU. Would you argue that those student athletes need to be more proactive with coaches and just reaching out to a lot more, casting a wider net, or what would you say?
I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question. The student that we have is a nursing major from our state and
Okay.
attended our elite camp as a rising junior. So we had recruited her for two years, if you will, which I would argue is a long time.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. The way you worded that, do they have to be more proactive? I wouldn't say that because I've seen kids on a great AAU team thinking that because they bought that jersey or traveling on the end of that bench that they deserve something, right? Just to
Yeah.
play the opposite way. So no, I think everybody needs to be proactive. I don't think your circumstances, of your AAU team dictate that. The other thing is, and this is what I appreciate about our conference and our league, the ODAC is a 13 member for women's basketball league, and there are schools that have a lot in common. There are schools that don't. There's a Venn diagram of everything that you could be looking for in a college within our conference. So, we tend to overlap with certain schools and we tend to not overlap with other schools. So for kids, if they get connected to one, they usually seek out five. And so that would be the other thing I would say is, if your schools are a D1 and a D3, that's a big disparity, but like maybe looking for things that look alike academically and level would be really important in terms of that proactiveness.
Okay. Yeah, and I know nursing is pretty big there. So when you said she was a nursing major, I'm assuming she sought out Shenandoah specifically for that nursing degree. But was the elite camp that she went to, was that the first time you ever saw her play?
Yes.
Okay. So
And
it
it was
sounds
when we did the posts and guards, which was your idea. So thank you.
congrats to her.
Yeah. Congrats to me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elle.
So we talked a lot about fit, personality, like meshing with you. And I know when they come on visits, they'll be interacting with the students on campus as well, the students on the team who could be their future teammates. How much weight do the student athletes have on that recruit in saying, not weight do they have, but how much influence do they have on your opinion of that student athlete in
An
terms of
initial,
fit?
yeah, an initial, I would say a lot is my answer. And this is what I can say in year 10. My answer would have been very different year 3. It would have been I would have manipulated that visit to get the right kids around the right kids and figuring that out. But, for me, I think that first visit is really heavy and dense with information about our program, about what it's like to be a student athlete at our school, and so on and so forth with the coaching staff. Future visits, I become hands off to a certain extent. Yeah, I'll go grab lunch with you, or I'll walk your parents to the bookstore or whatever. But it's the interactions that perspective will be very heavy with living a day in the life as a student athlete and shadowing our girls, mirroring what they're doing and observing their lives, and the interactions will be very student heavy. Um, and that's intentional. And our girls are great. And I try really hard not to waste their time. So I'd like to think that I'm bringing them their future teammates and they stamp that approval or not. For me, they definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
If something happened during pickup, recruits are allowed to play pickup at certain times of the year, they'll tell me and that'll matter to me, and maybe red flags pop up. But I do weigh what our students say a lot in year 10, our current kids, and I try not to waste our athletes' time. I try not to bother them on the weekends when we're not in season. There's only so many Saturday nights that a college kid gets, right?
Yeah.
So I think they understand that I'm respecting their time, and they give our recruits, and when they host recruits, their time. And so, they know it's self-serving to do that. And hopefully it pays dividends, right? If you're a freshman hosting a recruit in the second month of school, that might seem really overwhelming until you play 3 years with that person. And
Yeah.
then you realize that was just a drop in the bucket of your relationship with them.
Mm-hmm. What types of questions should athletes when on visits ask the coaching staff and the student athletes?
Um, there's so many. There's so many. I mean, obviously things that'll, stimulate things that could lead to bigger conversations as opposed to just yes or no questions. But you have to remember if you're going to ask hard questions, you're going to get hard answers. So if you want to go right to the head coach and say, where am I on your point guard list? You have to be prepared for that answer to be not great or great, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I've had that this year. I've had some kids ask some really aggressive questioning where I've never intentionally tried to be malicious, but sometimes when the answer is no, it hurts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But asking questions that to players that the coach maybe can't answer. I don't know what it's like to be a student athlete at Shenandoah because I am not a student athlete at Shenandoah. Ask the players about the coaching staff. ask that. And if they're being weird, that's a red flag for the perspective.
Yeah.
Our players like me are too honest. They will tell the truth. And if that truth doesn't line up with you, what you want, isn't that better to know that now?
Hmm.
Um, just asking questions that you're going to get what you want out of it. The reality of the student life is huge. How do you balance school and basketball, time management stuff? Asking the players that type of stuff because they'll be honest with you.
Hmm.
Um,
Are there any questions for you that are off limits? Like, don't ask me that.
no, I don't think so. I mean, I want when I and you know this, Elle. I mean, you're a part of my family because we worked together for 6 years, and I've been as vulnerable with you as I've been with anyone in my life. And it's one of those things that I'm trying to coach this team, this program, and guide women as hard and as best as I can. And that comes with blood, sweat, and tears. But I'm going to be honest with you because blank happens, like bad stuff goes down. Life is hard, but we're going to be there together. So no, there's no questions that are off limits. I've been through some really bad stuff and some really challenging things. I've been through great stuff, and I'm happy to share all of that with you. And this is who I am, and I want you to know that because that's how I'm going to be when you're on my team. And if I hope that that's a lifelong commitment. So no, there's no questions for me that are off limits.
Yeah. So let's move to the transition to college. So once somebody commits to the school, you offer them, they say they're coming, there's a big party, it's all great. That whole transition can be very stressful. What are some proactive strategies or tips you can recommend for athletes to excel academically and athletically in that first year, first semester?
Yeah, I mean, the transition period from commitment to arrival, I think is really important. And if it's just one big party and celebration, that's step one of what not to do.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
you
that goes back
know,
to your point about getting to the picture versus the full
yeah.
full years
I
as a
mean, we can all
student
picture
athlete.
that photo, right? Where they iron this cloak to put over a plastic table and they take a photo. Um, but yeah, I think that transition goes, from commitment to arrival, but then there's an extended transition. So I can break that down into the two parts. I mean, when you're still floating in outer space before you get here, we try to provide a ton of resources that you can utilize and hit up if needed. So your peers, your future teammates, we do summer work, buddy group kind of system. This year we had 5 groups of students. Every single group had only one first year in it. So that's how we divvied that up. And the workout packets get sent and the book we read The Energy Bus this year by John Gordon, which I can lean in on later. But you know, um, all that stuff is there for them if needed. I also try to not bother them while also providing resources because I do recognize graduation, prom, beach week. No, 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 no. I can go on and on with what kids do. Those are really important to being the capstone to their high school social experiences. Um, so I try not to be annoying because the reality is when you get here, I start to be annoying because I try to set up a structure that stabilizes and creates, minimal choices. And that sounds bad. But like today, so today it's the first Tuesday after the school year has started. It's right after Labor Day. Today is the first day of study hall for Shenandoah women's basketball. So that's what I mean by setting up parameters. So the kids will be in there for 2 to 3 hours, several days a week. Again, creating a structure that is a safety net to help them progress forward. Um, so, proactive strategies from the perspective of the students. Ask for help, use your resources, use your peers, use your future friends. You're not annoying them. Everyone will pay it forward, right? Everyone has already been in your shoes. Ask for help, go to the coach's office, say hello, all of that stuff. Be an active participant in your journey and don't expect everyone to just, dote on you. You've got to, again, be in charge, be the captain of your ship.
Yeah, I think that's all.
Um,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the biggest thing too athletically, and we say this a lot, is like you have to do something. Our workout packet is really extensive. I honest to goodness don't expect the kids to do every single day. I really don't. I really don't. But if you come in and it looks like you did nothing, it's going to be very obvious and you're just going to set yourself back. So being as prepared as humanly possible, you still won't be prepared. But don't get so overwhelmed that you shut down and do nothing. Because the reality is you were really good in your high school class. You were really good for AAU. You're one of this, what is it, like 4% or something of kids? I mean,
Yeah,
that might even be
it's
too high. That number is
yeah.
probably too high of students that go to play in college. And think about this, and I've said this a lot to kids, we have 18-year-old freshmen, 19-year-old freshmen, I should say first years, excuse me, and they're going against 22 and 23-year-olds because of the fifth year COVID kid. Those are women. Those aren't girls. Those are grown women. So you better get in the weight room. The weight room doesn't lie. So just put one foot in front of the other and make sure you try.
hmm Yeah, and also think it's important that goes back to questions they should ask is when they're on a visit, what support do you provide? Because you just rattled off a whole bunch of structure that you provide, plus resources, and the fact that you say come to the office means that you're going to advocate for them. If that's something that you like, I would definitely ask every coach that you visit with, what support would you
Yeah.
provide? Do you provide, is it just basketball? What does that look like? So I think all of those
That's a
really
really good
help.
point. Yeah, because some people would probably say just basketball, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that because like right now my office door is closed because we're on a Zoom. So I hope that three kids came by and were like, "You're not there," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I was. I was talking about your great experiences." But I actually feel somewhat limiting in the sense that I'm a parent now. The bus the bus schedule owns me a little bit, so I've got to be home at four o'clock to get my son off the bus and so I try to be as present as possible when I am here. And that is something that I missed from not having kids, where I used to just be here until 6 o'clock, just hanging out and seeing the girls and having so many organic opportunities to be around them. That's a little bit stifled from my own personal life, but you got to pour in someplace else. So a lot of these structures, and it helps having a full-time assistant, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. So you're saying a lot of great stuff, but we do have to start to wrap it up a little bit. And these are the last couple questions that I ask all of our guests. And I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, maybe like 5 minutes ago. But what book or podcast would you recommend every incoming first year read before their first season begins, and why?
We every year we read a book. Annually we read a book. It changes, it rotates. Um, so many John Gordon books are outstanding in terms of team first, these lessons that are fables through life that you can easily apply to sport. This current year, we're in our energy bus year. I think that we've just gotten back to some simplistic ideology of just being a good teammate. No energy vampires. That's where we're at. Get the right people on the bus. I can go on and on with the 10 roles. That's what our book is. There's so many great John Gordon books. There's so many great other books. My absolute favorite, though, and we do this at least once every 4-year cycle, is the book Legacy by James Kerr. And maybe it's John Kerr now that I'm confused, but Mr. Kerr wrote it. And I love that book. I can't wait to do it again. I think we're going to do it next summer. I'm just chomping at the bit to bring that in. So, any of those books that you're going to read to learn lessons, not about, X's and O's or your vertical leap, but how to be a good, comrade in the locker room. That's the stuff that's going to help
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, that's the book Abby said too.
John Gordon Energy Us,
No, no, no. She said
Legacy.
Legacy. Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
book's fantastic.
Yeah,
That
it's a
book
good
is so
one.
good.
So next question, what is something about the recruiting process or transition that you believe that other coaches might disagree with?
I thought about this because you prompted me, but I thought about this, and I don't want to be negative. I want to be positive, right? Because this comes off negative in some ways. I do not believe in putting student athletes on a calendar that works for me. So I might want you to commit by November 1st, but I'm not going to make you commit by November 1st. And it's now just after Labor Day, right? So we're seeing kids feeling pressure to make decisions. I talked to a student athlete that I did not get this past weekend on the phone. And she said, I'm sorry it's taking me so long. I know you want me to make a decision. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I never said that. If anyone's making you do that, you need to do what you want to do. So I will never, ever put kids on the clock to make a decision. When I offer kids a spot, it's good forever. And I have actually had kids transfer down a level to us in the past because they said they made the wrong decision 2 years before. So that if I liked you now, I should like you then. And if you're on my team, I'm going to love you for 5 years. So I don't put people on a clock. I just don't believe in that. And I think that has been self-serving because other people do that. And then I think we can get kids because of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Play the
And
long game. It's hard, but
yeah,
it's worth it. If the kids are worth it in September, they're worth it in April.
yeah, for sure. And I think when I was at Shenandoah, some of our best recruits committed
Ugh,
in
so
like,
late.
yeah, so late, like April. Yeah.
April. I'm like,
Yeah.
girl, pull it. I'm ready for you.
Yeah.
But they got to know me really well and they got to know us and our
Hmm.
program really well. So if that's what they needed to do, then it was worth it.
Yeah, for sure. So last but not least, any final words of wisdom?
Fit. That's it. That's it. It's just about fit. Find the school that wants you equal or greater than you want them.
Yeah.
Listen, I would have loved to go play at Duke. I ended up at Drew. And it's 4 letters with a D. And one of those schools was really, really good to me.
Hmm.
And the other one doesn't know who I am. So, find the school and the person and the people that are going to make you the best version of yourself. Do that. And if that's not your end goal, you got to recalibrate because if you take the basketball away, yeah, that's what you got to find and
Hmm.
relentlessly pursue that beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for being here. If anybody wants to find out more about Shenandoah women's basketball, see what you all are up to, where can they find you?
We have social media accounts, SU Hornets, WBB. I think we've got TikTok now too. We got to get back on there, but we've got Instagram, we've got, X or whatever you call it. I've got a Twitter too. Hit us up on social media, follow us. We're honestly out here trying to have fun. So, we're trying to have fun. We're trying to be positive. We're trying to broadcast our kids and the great things that they're accomplishing as student athletes here at Shenandoah. So please follow us, enjoy us. Again, we try to have fun. So there's always some goofy stuff on there now and again.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elle.
Thank you all for listening to our second episode. If you're looking for more specific recruiting advice based on your recruiting situation, head over to hoopsthroughlife.com and schedule your free 30-minute strategy session with me. We will assess where you are currently in your recruitment journey, where you want to go, and then we'll lay out the roadmap to get you there. Again, that is hoopsthroughlife.com, hoopsthroughlife.com. And if you have any other questions, you can also email us at hoopsthroughlife@gmail.com. And we also have an Instagram. It's at hoopsthroughlife. No spaces or underscores or anything, just hoopsthroughlife. And I look forward to meeting with you soon.